Walker Kessler's development as an isolation defender, purely remarkable. We dig into it next on Locked on Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. We are also available on YouTube. If you don't already know that, thank you so much for tuning in. And we are free and available every single day. That's what we pride ourselves on, and we will continue to be that way for you. All right, on today's show, we've got a lot of stuff coming for you. We'll wrap up the show today with points gained, which is our offensive metric that evaluates how where every offensive player ranks. Compare them, look at them. We'll look at some of the Jazz players as well. We usually do this once a week, about once every other week, to just trying to get a gauge on everybody, and we'll look at where they are in the top 10 as well as the top 20 players in the NBA, in the top over for the season as well as over the last 10 games, which always gives you a little bit of a check on how people are playing. We'll get you slightly ready for the Memphis Grizzlies today as well. They've got just a unique piece or two I'll mention about the Grizzlies and what you should watch when you're watching or listening to the game tonight. I owe you from yesterday some Will Hardy comments that I never got to. I apologize for that. As well as we have a lot of good going on for the Jazz, and we have some bad going on for the Jazz. We'll touch on that as well. But let's start off with Walker Kessler's defensive evolution as an elite isolation defender. That is pretty geeky, but pretty important. As we talked about on yesterday's show, having Walker be able to play in isolation defense allows the Jazz to play a different styles of defense when they want. I went to dinner last night, and actually one of the conversations was about the old Jazz team with Rudy Gobert and everyone, that we just had only kind of one pitch to throw defensively in the way that the team was formed. Walker suddenly allows you to play, if you have a night where they're playing a rolling big, to play the drop. But if they're playing a popping big, Walker's now isolation is allowing you to play that switch as well. And it eventually, and we're not a good defensive team right now, but eventually can allow you, Walker, to be the cornerstone defensive player that gives you the ability to adapt and play in a multiple of different styles. So why is this so important? That's why. It is so important because it allows the Jazz to eventually get to a point where they can play in multiple different styles of basketball. And if they can do that, then they can become an elite and better defensive team. And if the best example I could give you would be back to the great, really fabulous Jazz teams that we had, but that we just could not adapt defensively and to play in a multitude of fashions because we felt uncomfortable having Rudy switch out on the floor, and it eventually came back to get us. So that's the thing. All right, here's the numbers on Walker's evolution, and it's pretty fascinating. So in year one in the NBA, Walker defended 85 isolations the entire season. He was really good at it. Year two, he defended 89 in the entire season. Okay, so years 1 and 2, Walker defends 85 and 89 isolation defenses. Plays. His first year is great. He's 0.84 points per 100 possessions. And then last year he slips to 0.92. Not bad, but not great. So 85 and 89 possessions in his first 2 years. This year, he's defended 155 possessions in isolation already this season, and he's playing less than he probably did a year ago. His defensive rating is at 0.86. So he's out of 100 isolation defenders. He's ranks 21st in the NBA. Okay, so he's in the upper percent. It's not like amazing. Oh my gosh, he's the best isolation defender in the NBA. But it's pretty good. And if you actually start to look at some other aspects of it, which are the guy who's Jamal Murray has been caught in the most pick and rolls. If we start to think about the other elite defenders, okay, Evan Mobley is a 0.94. Walker's 0.86. That's your reference point. Jarrett Allen is 0.85. So right about the exact same. Vaka Zubac, who's been in the sixth most pick and roll isolations, or just isolations this year, is 0.86. So on the bigs, Alex Sarr, rookie, is at 1.09. Naz Reid is at 1.07. Jakob Poeltl is at 1.04. Those are not good. Brook Lopez is 0.98. He's slowed down a little bit. Walker's at 0.86. So if you look at the bigs, Okongwu in Atlanta, who's supposed to be a great defender, 1.05. Rudy Gobert, 1.03. A little disconcerting for Minnesota there. Nikola Vucevic, who's actually not thought to be a very good defender, 0.89. So he's obviously improved that. You look at the other bigs, hard to find many that are much better than Anthony Davis, 0.83. Walker's 0.86. You find the other bigs here, you don't find many that are better than Walker Kessler, right? So we have Anthony Davis is a little bit better. You would presume so. Jarrett Allen is 0.85 to Walker's 0.86. That's pretty similar. Zubac is about the same. So now Walker is in, and if you hold someone at 0.86 a possession, you're ecstatic. So now Walker is in the collectively kind of elite group of big defenders. What's interesting also is to look at the progression of the season. So I broke Walker's season into 3 parts. We go to December 3rd. Through December 3rd, Walker had played 15 games. And then I looked at December 6th through January 25th. At that point, Walker had played. That gives Walker that gives Walker 20 games. And then I looked at January 30th to March 10th. And I probably could have moved those dates a little bit. January 30th to March 10th gets Walker another 14 games. So I probably could have moved in there a little bit. But Walker starts to sit, doesn't play the Warriors in Milwaukee game. He's out for 2 games, and then he started kind of this new world where he's playing in and out of games. In the first 15 and the last 15 games, he defended about 43 isolations, so about the same amount. A little bit more just because there's one less game. And in the middle of those 20 games, he defended 71. So in the middle, we really made him play isolation defense. And what's interesting about his year is he started brilliantly at 0.76. And then in the middle pack, he goes up to 0.91. I think we just suddenly must have had him playing isolation anytime we could, or isolation defense. And now he's at 0.88 in the last stretch of games where he, I think, is improving, getting better at it. Really got thrown in the deep end a huge amount and then has kind of figured it out. We have not, by the way, won a basketball game in which Walker Kessler didn't play since we beat Brooklyn on January 12th. Otherwise, when Walker doesn't play, we lose. We lost to New Orleans by 13, Milwaukee by 15, Golden State by 11, Clippers by 20, Clippers by 4, Portland by 2, Washington, and Philadelphia. If Walker doesn't play, we lose. Just maybe useful information for the rest of the way. But that's his progression. He's now defending the isolation as well as the Jarrett Allens of the world, right on the level of below the level, off the level of Anthony Davis. And he's gone from doing it about 85 times a year to 155 this year. It's a big, big difference. And throughout the year, it's kind of evolved. 2 other notes on that, by the way. If you look at the top 100 isolation defenders, Kyle Filipowski is the 11th worst, and Lowry's the 12th worst. The interesting note on Kyle is if you look at the first half of Kyle's season, he's a 1.08. And the second part of Kyle's season, he's a 1.03. So he's getting better at it. He's beginning to figure it out and how to get better at it, which is pretty cool to see that take place with Kyle and have him get an understanding of how he can get better and improve in that fashion. So good stuff right there for Kyle Filipowski. Great stuff for Walker Kessler. Jazz beginning to kind of get these pieces to figure it out and to figure out how to play on that level of defense that they need to play, and giving them a versatile defensive group that looks differently. All right, unselfish champions, good and bad for the Jazz, unique Memphis, all coming up as we continue on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by our good friend over at Intercap Lending, and that is Steve Carter, the absolutely fabulous, incomprehensibly great Steve Carter. And Steve Carter is our own personal loan officer. He has been for about 5 or 6 years now, and his customer service is simply unequaled. Intercap Lending is a really interesting company. Brock Worthen's the president, who I have great feelings about his level of work as well. They are a mortgage company that is making home loans accessible, straightforward, and personable. And whether you're buying your first home, refinance, or exploring options as a veteran, Intercap is here to guide you. Rates keep dropping, and now might be the time to jump aboard. He's been sitting on the sideline. Underwriting times still are at 24 hours. Most banks take 4 to 7 days to get your decision from an underwriter, and Intercap is different because they're actually servicing over 60% of their own loans. So Intercap Lending is simplifying the journey to home ownership. If you're ready to make the move, even if you're just starting to explore, give them a look, and then you'll feel supported, informed, and confident every step of the way. It's Intercap Lending. Steve Carter, email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com so that I can get you the VIP treatment you deserve from Steve. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com so we can get you over to Steve Carter at Intercap Lending. Time to give your house a refresh? Well, then do it with our friends over at Wayfair. Your home should reflect your style, and with Wayfair, it's easier than ever to make that happen. Whether you're looking for a simple refresh or tackling a big home project, Wayfair has everything you need in one place. Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find perfect piece no matter your space or your budget. From cozy furniture and stylish decor to kitchen essentials and outdoor must-haves, Wayfair has it all at the prices that fit your budget. Looking for a new rug for the living room? Wayfair's got it for you. Looking for something more significant? Wayfair's got it for you. Wayfair's got the easy shipping and delivery for you as well, and you can find everything from storage solutions to patio decor. Head over to wayfair.com and find something that's your style today. It's Wayfair, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. You have the new daily newsletter as well, Locked on Jazz. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and get the Locked on Jazz daily newsletter. Update you everything going on with the Jazz. Will already had 2 really interesting comments the other day. I mentioned them and I never got to them, and I apologize. So the first was, whenever he talked about the Celtics, he talked about their unselfish champions and leaders. And it was really clear that what he sees interesting about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is their willingness to collaborate, their willingness to take maybe a little less at times, their unselfish play. He mentioned it about 3 different times when referencing what Boston did last year or who they were as a team. And that jumped out at me and was, I thought, worth mentioning. The other one I thought was interesting is he talked about Sam Hauser manufacturing catch and shoots. We think of this catch and shoot play in the NBA so much as you're sitting in the corner, somebody else does something, drives and kicks to you, and now you go get a corner 3. And that's how I often think about, like, you're manufacturing a corner 3, or you're getting a corner 3, or you're getting a catch and shoot. But he was talking about Sam Hauser off the ball, ducking in, coming back, moving in to the paint, coming off a pick, manufacturing catch and shoot opportunities. I don't know who on our roster is that same player. It might be Bryce. I thought Bryce had a really, really nice game the other night. That needs to learn how to manufacture. Maybe Keontae, as he learns to play off the ball more and more. Maybe we'll see that out of them, as that's their version of manufacturing some catch and shoots for you. I thought it was an interesting way to think about it. You think about maybe Klay Thompson was another one who manufactured catch and shoots in their career, the way that Will referenced Sam Hauser. But I generally thought of catch and shoots as you're catching and shooting and standing still and getting it from everybody else's actions. There's good happening for the Utah Jazz, and there's bad happening for the Utah Jazz. So the good that's happening for the Utah Jazz is some surprise wins recently. So New Orleans beat the Clippers last night, and the night before, Charlotte beat Miami. So in draft position right now, and when we talk about the top of the league, you talk about the loss column, but here we're going to talk about the win column. Because, frankly, you kind of are trying to control. In the good teams, the theory is that they're not going to lose very often. And so the not very good teams, your theory is you're not going to win very often. So in the loss column, in the win column, Washington has 13 wins. They've won 4 of their last 10. We have 15 wins. We've lost 6 straight, 8 of 10. Charlotte, with their win the other night, goes to 16 wins, 1 better than us. And New Orleans goes to 18. And Brooklyn's now at 22. So I think it would be very unlikely that we're going to win another 7 games this year. So at this point, the Jazz will go to the lottery either as the 1, 2, 3, or 4 pick. 3-win differential between us and New Orleans feels significant. What's important about that is that if you're 1, 2, or 3 in the draft, you're guaranteed a 52%. You have the best odds, 52% to top 4, and 14% on the number 1 overall pick. So Charlotte's win the other night, or New Orleans win last night's big, because now we have a 3-win differential between them, and more and more likely, depending, we have some soft games coming up here. But more and more likely that we will be in those top 3 with the 52% odds for a top 4 pick and a 14% overall number 1. The Charlotte win moved us to 2nd in draft position. And while your lottery odds are no different, what's important to remember is that if you get jumped, you're still picking ahead of the other one. So if I were to hit a lottery simulation right now, and Phoenix jumps to the very top to get the number 1 pick and then loses the pick to Houston. Oh, God, would that be terrible for Phoenix? We would and Brooklyn jumped ahead of us as well. We slide to 3. We actually win the lottery as the 3rd pick we got in this scenario. And Miami jumps up to the 4. So they lottery the first 4 positions. And then we go into draft position. So in this case, which was close to being really bad, Phoenix went to 1. Brooklyn went to 2. We went to 3. We actually won. We were selected as our 52% in the top 4. And then Miami jumped all the way from the very bottom to 4th. Washington, then it goes into order. So then Washington went next. We would have gone after that, and Charlotte, if that makes sense. You're still in your draft position after the top 4. The top 4 picks are done with lottery simulation. If I do it again, Washington got 1, Chicago got 2, Philly got 3, and we get 4. That means, again, we got selected in the lottery. Charlotte then at 5 stays in draft position. So there is a real chance you're going to drop as far as 5 or 6, and you want to make sure that you're not dropping to 7 or 8. So that is the good news. The bad news is that everyone around Minnesota is collapsing. And Minnesota's winning. But everyone's collapsing around Minnesota. So the hope is that Minnesota go to the play-in and lose. But I think Minnesota's going to end up 6. They're a half game behind the Warriors. I think they're the better team. They've won 5 in a row. The Clippers have suddenly lost 4 of 10. Sacramento does not have it put together under Doug Christie. They lost by 30 at home the other day. Dallas has been crippled with injuries, and Phoenix is not capable of clicking in. There's just not the team that's going to knock Minnesota out of this. Minnesota, about 2 weeks ago, looked super vulnerable. If Dallas hadn't traded Luka, you figured Dallas was going to catch Minnesota. If Sacramento hadn't traded De'Aaron Fox, you thought there was a chance Sacramento catch Minnesota. Kawhi was coming back, and you thought there was a chance that Minnesota could be 9 or 10 and possibly lose, and then we add their lottery odds. But that is just not happening. That is not good for the Utah Jazz. The Minnesota is rising up. I think will be 6. I don't think they can catch Houston. And Golden State will probably slide to the play-in. So that's the good and the bad for the Utah Jazz. Jazz play the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. They're unique. I'll explain why, and we'll points gain all coming up here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. Yep, you got it. It's that season, and it's time for you to make sure that you take care of taxes. It's that simple. Like my wife literally said to me, I said, hey, you want to do something on Saturday? She said, I'm doing taxes. Which is really the way of my wife, who's wonderful and fabulous, saying, you're not doing the taxes. I'm doing the taxes. And that is really what she was trying to tell me. And I think I just said thank you, because I think that was the appropriate response for you. All right, so it's that type of season, time of year, and TurboTax is here to help you get through it with all that TurboTax has to offer. Here's the deal with TurboTax and the offers for you right now with TurboTax and taxes. This taxes was waiting, wondering, worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. And now taxes is matching with TurboTax Expert, who can do your taxes as soon as today. The expert who gives you your taxes, their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on the progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, fill out every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. So get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. Today's show is also brought to you by Skims. Skims underwear for men. Fabulous. Travel day. Told you already this week. That's what I wear on travel days is Skims. I've got 2 pair with me on this trip because when I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. Women have loved it. It's been a big deal. You've heard about it from family and friends. So I had to give it a try, and the answer is yes. Whether it is the cotton 3-inch boxer brief, the 3-inch stretch boxer brief, the Skims cotton brief, the Skims stretch brief, they all are there for you. The 5-inch boxer brief as well. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Skims stores, skimsmen.com/LockedOnNBA. Let them know we sent you. Place your order, select podcast in the survey, and please let them know this show. Fit, comfort, right style. Skims has changed all of it. The men's line's offering something for everyone from boxer briefs to classic brief, all designed with perfect balance, comfort, and style. Skims, SKIMS, skims.com/LockedOn. All right, when we watch Memphis tonight, they're unique. They run the fewest pick and rolls of anyone in the NBA. They're going to open the floor. They just play this drive. They play what they're calling collective basketball is their cute little phrase for it. But if you look at per 100 possessions, Phoenix runs the most pick and rolls at 81. Memphis is going to run 38 tonight. They run 12 less than the second least amount of any team in the NBA, Denver. And then the Jazz only run 58. So that's going to be two teams that do not run a huge amount of pick and roll in tonight's game. All right, let's go to I have not looked at any of this. Let's look at points gained. The battle for the MVP was what we focused on last time. And whether it was Nikola Jokić or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jokić seems to be gaining. There's an interesting article in The Ringer where a bunch of people, 9 out of 10 were suddenly voting for Jokić, which was a bit surprising. Jeremy Brunner of our staff is kind of pointing out you don't have the leading scorer on the best team lose the MVP. You don't usually have the leading scorer in the league on the best team either, which is part of it. So that makes it. Okay, Jokić is at a 3.8, and Shai is now at a 3.5. Points gained. What is points gained? Points gained is points above what the average NBA player would do with those same possessions. So every night, Nikola Jokić is giving his team a 3.8 point advantage above average players, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is giving his team a 3.5 point advantage. So they're both just worlds ahead of anyone else. Next is Jarrett Allen at 2.8, Kevin Durant at 2.7, Domantas Sabonis at 2.6, Daniel Gafford at 2.4, Zach LaVine at 2.4, Giannis 2.3, Karl-Anthony Towns 2.2, Jalen Duren 2.2, Walker Kessler now moving up. That likes bigs that dunk. Norman Powell 2.1, Dame Lillard 2.1, Christian Brown 1.9, Evan Mobley 1.9, Cameron Johnson, Steph Curry, Rudy Gobert, Derek Lively, John Collins at 1.5, even after this may not have the other day shooting day in there. Poor John Collins the other night. Okay, the player that is having the most negative impact in the NBA offensively this year, DeJounte Murray 1, Alex Sarr 2, KJ Simpson 3, but I'm not sure he's played enough. 23 games. Kyle Kuzma, LaMelo Ball, Keon Johnson, Scotty Barnes, Nick Smith, Lonnie Walker, who hasn't played much, Micic, Paolo Banchero, interesting, came back and they got less good, right? Fred VanVleet, Isaiah Collier, Stephen Castle. These are the guys who are having the negative impact on their team. Jordan Hawkins, Terry Rozier, Bilal Coulibaly. For the Utah Jazz, overall, as a team, we've heard Walker and John Collins near the top of the list. See where Keontae is. He has done a much better job. Walker's 2.2, John's 1.5, KJ Martin 0.9, Colin Sexton 0.5, not bad for a guard. Filipowski 0.5, Bryce 0.2. That's nice. That's good. Lowry is an even average NBA offensive player this year. Keontae's a minus 1.1. That is slid. That is not great. Jordan's minus 1.1. Cody's minus 1.3. Isaiah's minus 1.6. I don't worry that much about young players, but You would have liked earlier this year, Keontae was kind of moving it up a little bit in a manner that made you feel as though it was heading in the right direction. That trend right there is a little less so. All right, let's go to last 10 games of an NBA season, find out who the hottest player in the NBA is, and see where Jazz players are in that stretch as well. Again, I have not seen this. I'm seeing this with you for the very first time. I have a feeling that Jokić will be top of the list here. He has been kind of otherworldly here for the last 10 games. Tyrese Haliburton is the hottest player in the NBA right now. Tyrese Haliburton has a points gained of 6.1. Wow. Rudy Gobert's not played much. Steph Curry, 5.5. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 5.4. So not Jokić. Zach LaVine, 4.3. Walker Kessler, 3.2. Jalen Duren, 2.9. Peyton Pritchard, 2.8. Josh Giddey, 2.7. Aaron Gordon, 2.7. Dante DiVincenzo, 2.7. Nikola Jokić, 2.5. So Shai, but Tyrese Haliburton, last 7 games, shooting 60% from the field, 55% from 3, averaging 24 points and 12 assists a game. Wow. How about Steph Curry at this age somehow doing that? That's insane. And who's the coldest player in the NBA right now? Well, Jordan Clarkson for that one game. Fred VanVleet, but I got to see how many games he's played. He's only played one. LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Maxey, Alex Sarr, Nick Smith, Ja Morant, who we'll see tonight. Darius Garland, interesting. PJ Washington, Bruce Brown, Naz Reid, De'Aaron Fox, interesting. Scotty Barnes, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Russell Westbrook are the coldest players in the NBA. Let's take a quick look at your Utah Jazz over the last 10 games. Playing kind of weird intermittent lineups. Walker's a plus 3.2. Filipowski, 1.5. That's terrific. KJ Martin, 0.7. Bryce, 0.5. That's terrific. Cody Williams, even. That's great. John Collins, minus 0.5 after the other night. Lowry, minus 1. Keontae, minus 2.1. It's disappointing. Isaiah, minus 2.1. Colin, minus 2.2. Keontae George, last 8 games, 37% from the field, 35% from 3. Yeah, that'll do it. Jazz, Grizzlies tonight. Ron Boone and I will be back with you on Postcast. If you haven't started following me on the socials, it's DLock09. Please do. Daily newsletter, Locked On Daily. Check it out. Glad to have you aboard. It is Locked On Jazz. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA channel, Locked On NBA. If you're on audio, check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night on Locked On NBA Game Night.